Esteemed members of Parliament, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak this evening. I will be speaking to the topic at hand. In regards to the UN Security Council and permanent seats, I will first address the points that we would like to make to reiterate our position and attempt to clarify our position on these points, then to better address yours, member of the opposition. So, at this juncture, I'd like to express that bureaucracy is a fundamental understanding that I think needs to happen between us, but also the issue of human rights. The issue of human rights was brought up in multiple opportunities by the opposition, mostly in regards to the opportunistic chance for hostile nations to take participation on the Security Council and the issue of resolving issues outside of warfare, that is to say humanitarian issues under the tutelage of the United Nations. It is fundamental to understand that the United Nations in its functional role can comment and attempt to influence the actions of foreign governments outside of warfare, but realistically, the understanding of the United Nations, say, pressuring the United States to no longer farm so that other countries have an opportunity to issue economic sanctions against hostile countries in the Middle East, which can be easily and readily ignored, is really plain semantics. While it can send a message, it doesn't save lives. Warfare involves lives. Warfare is a criticality that needs to be addressed because with every passing day, lives are expended. And the expansion of human lives is ultimately something that most countries, with the exception of a token few in the Middle East, can say is a critical value to the point at hand. This said, it is important to understand that this notion of positive peace is undermined by the very fact that perpetrators of some of the greatest human rights crimes have permanent seats on the United Nations. Russia, who conveniently has politicians and political dissidents poisoned by palladium, and China, who is occasionally late to meetings due to their forced abortions, really undermine the sense of gravitas and professional and most of all, diplomatic understanding that the United Nations should foster. Diplomacy can't work when people are not playing fair. And it's very hard to play fair when certain countries are automatically entitled to privileges that other countries are not. In the United States, we unfortunately have a pattern of white normativity that influences the way that politics and business as usual is handled, and this ultimately disenfranchises certain individuals on the basis of how things are. For us to extend this metaphor to the United Nations, the assumption that the United States is a bastion of human rights, while we would like to on paper say that this is obviously a grand narrative to stand behind, this is not necessarily a standing truth. This may not be a future standing truth. Likewise, the inclusion of France, the United Kingdom, China, and Russia as assumed and thereby stable entities that deserve permanent veto power is somehow trivializing the and ultimately holding up the notions at hand. Now, to the charge that we are adding a level of bureaucracy, this can most easily be expressed by the question of how. To me, the notion of bureaucracy is when internal politicking prevents or preserves an establishment or institution that prevents progress from taking place. If standing nations automatically have the ability to remain in power, they will develop institutions and patterns of internal old boy politics of sorts that will prevent real, true, diplomatic, international progress from taking place. This cannot happen while these nations are permanently seated, in conjunction with the fact that an additional level of bureaucracy is added insofar as these nations are diametrically opposed to their vision of how human rights should be. With that said, we can then rotate to the point about Rwanda. We mention Rwanda not to say that we can change the past, but on the basis that the United States, a presupposed nation of value and of liberty, the president, William Jefferson Clinton, could not determine the definition of genocide until it had surpassed the deaths of 200,000 individuals. If the United States cannot settle on a definition of genocide, I can't imagine how Russia and China are going to do any better if permanently seated. This said, the notion of interfering. Why are we interfering? Well, that's what the United Nations, in my understanding, to some degree will do. If we are inconvenienced by the presence of these other nations on the United Nations board, then what is the purpose of even convening the United Nations in the first place? If every member nation will go home but with a lesson learned, I don't really see how that's furthering diplomatic understanding. If I can go up and speak about the sort of platitudes of peace, and a select group of countries can ignore me, and we have absolutely no repercussive action that we can take towards them, I'm not really sure what the purpose of even convening is. That said, the notion of asymmetric warfare, more power for countries who are unliked, the leader of the opposition, yes, David?
Do you believe lives triumph over rights in every circumstance?
Do I believe that lives triumph over rights?
In every circumstance.
In every circumstance?
For this round.
God, I need 15 minutes to even try to process what that means. I can't answer that. To the notion, though, of asymmetric warfare, the leader, the esteemed leader of the opposition, did bring up that China is a disliked country. What if they were put into power? The fact is, China's in power. So to preserve this institution is not a furtherment to peace. And back to the notion of interfering, while we can speak of humanitarian platitudes, it is impossible for nations in times of peace, ultimately, we can discuss, but we cannot force. The United Nations cannot force, but we do have peacekeepers, and those peacekeepers are rather universally, with the exception of a few select groups of terrorists, allowed to do their humanitarian duty in these places and to not extend peacekeeping forces to areas of conflict because of political semantics seems counterintuitive to the purposes of the institution as it stands. I will finish my point saying that the focus on the military is a realistic one. The truths are that military action in some form or another has dictated the past 50 years since the establishment of the United Nations, from juntas being formed in Malaysia and coups in Thailand to the rise to power of tribal warfare in African nations. Warfare is a defining feature of human life, and moreover, warfare has the greatest impact in a time scale to the preservation of peace and liberty. And it is with these points considered that I thank you for allowing me to address these, and I open the floor to the member of the opposition to return. Thank you.